is a feel-good Friday, and this is 580 Sports Talk. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are here with you for the next 2 hours. That's right, another shortened show for us because of Royals baseball on the East Coast. The boys in blue taking on the Tampa Bay Rays for the second day in a row, and then 2 more this weekend as well. And the Royals are actually coming off of a win. How about that?
Genuinely startling.
It did help that Shane McClanahan did not pitch a full start. Certainly benefited the Royals, but wins are wins. You should be excited about a win if you're the Kansas City Royals.
When you've only got 21 of them, you don't apologize for a single one of those. And you went on the road, beat the best team in baseball. That's a good feeling. It's a good way to start this particular 4-game series. No question.
Is that the concept of best wins don't really mean anything in professional sports because there's no RPI or net or committee assigning you to the playoffs?
This ain't college football, no.
But is that when was the last good Royals win? Beating the Orioles on May 3rd?
The Mike Myers near no hitter against the Cardinals, though the Cardinals stink. So
the Cardinals are butt.
Yeah, they really stink. Not like we're too far down the road to be like, hey, maybe they'll figure it out. Nah, man, they're kind of sorry. I don't know. That I gotta think that's their best win. Their best series win is 2 out of 3 in San Diego. Their best series win out of the 4 you can choose from.
I mean, the Giants have been really hot recently. They were not good early in the year, but the Royals won a series with them.
Yeah, that's true.
That's something.
No, that was a good win. I mean, going to last night, I'm sure I said it out loud on these airwaves that the starting pitching matchup was Shane McClanahan and Jose Cuas. And so I did not hold out much hope for the boys in blue last night. But hey, credit Drew Waters for a couple of big hits late in the ball game. MJ Melendez beating out an infield hit to score Michael Garcia, who stole 2 bases. We'll talk about both of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Cox with some really nice relief work. Quality win.
Take it.
Good ball game.
Take note, committee.
Well played ball game. Absolutely.
No, that was awesome for the Kansas City Royals. So we'll talk about that. We'll preview the rest of the weekend for the Royals and Rays as well. Also this hour, we've got our weekly dose of Change My Mind, and Matt Derrick will swing on by, our Chiefs insider, on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. We'll talk some NBA draft from last night, and I was just chuckling a minute ago. Bill Self doesn't tweet very often. It's very rare. He just tweeted 1 minute ago, "Get your passports ready. Congrats, Gradey. We are so proud of you. Now let's get Jalen picked." Apparently the Wi-Fi wasn't all that great at the Barclays Center last night.
You think that one sat in the draft?
I think that tweet was supposed to come out at about 8:30 last night. It came out at 3:08 this afternoon.
He tapped that in and put away his phone and then didn't pick it up until now and got the notification. "We're sorry, we weren't able to send that tweet. Would you like to try again?"
Would you like? Oh my God. There was a text. Would you like to send as a regular text message instead of an iMessage? That's extremely funny. But it was a very good night for most of our local products. First round draft pick, top 10 to 14 for Gradey Dick. That's about what we were thinking. Ends up 13th. Great fit there. Keyontae goes ahead of Jalen Wilson, albeit by 1 spot, both a little bit later than they were hoping, but we nailed that one too. And then Marquise Noel had a contract with the Toronto Raptors approximately a half a second after the draft ended.
Remember,
we hit all 3 of those things.
Remember when we did either or over under yesterday and you said, what collection of players would you rather have? Keyontae Johnson and Jalen Wilson together, or Gradey Dick and Marquise Noel together? And Masai Ujiri said, is he still running the Raptors?
Yeah, I think so.
He said, give me option B.
Just apparently looking for last minute insight on some of these players from Kansas.
Confirmed listener to 580 Sports Talk. Do you think he catches it live or does he listen to the podcast?
Oh, podcast version. I bet you he's up at like 3 a.m. Like I gotta get my daily sports fix.
Got to catch up with the guys. I at least got to get what is wrong with you.
Oh yeah. Oh, big what is wrong.
Yeah.
Masai Ujiri, definitely a big what is wrong with you guy.
100%.
So we'll talk some NBA draft coming up in a little bit. Really good night, I think, for everybody. I think fit-wise, it all makes a lot of sense. I think probably the biggest fit I'm not even concerned about, but curious about is Keyontae with the Thunder. I just don't know what they will ask of him, but we'll talk about that. Really good night locally. Other thoughts on the NBA draft from last evening. We've got our What Is Wrong With You championship for the week, and we'll get to some 580 Sports Talk headlines to take you into the weekend. Again, 5 o'clock stop time for us today. That's when we'll send you to the Royals radio network as we get ready for game 2 between the Royals and Rays. Don't forget, you can send in your texts, your thoughts on anything we were talking about on the show. That's on the text line 785-272-9429. And the YouTube comment section is open as well. YouTube channel is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Some really strong performances on an individual level for the Royals last night in that win over the Rays. And hey, look, in a year when you haven't had a whole lot to celebrate, you should be stoked about this. Like, I hope Royals fans, you had a great night last night. You said, oh man, this is fun. This is what it's supposed to be.
It was a good ball game. Like what it was, the Tampa threw the first punch. Kansas City tied it in the third. Waters with the go-ahead home run in the 7th. Rays responded, got 3 in the bottom of the 7th. And the Royals chip away, tied in the 8th, another big hit from Waters, and then score on the infield hit from Melendez in the 9th. And Barlow does the job in the bottom of the 9th to secure the victory against a really good ball club that had been coming off of a win and has the best record in the American League. It was a good baseball game. Like I had it on, I second screened it last night with the NBA draft, and I enjoyed watching the game.
Royals had a couple, like I said, strong individual performances, and I think they were samples of the value that we are seeing peeking through the very dark and stormy clouds of this season. The one we don't need to touch on a ton is Scott Barlow. Another good outing. That's a couple in recent memory. He did pretty good this season, and there's a reason why he is, I think, going to hopefully fetch a pretty decent return when he gets dealt, assuming he gets dealt at or before the trade deadline this year. But that's what you come to expect. 1 inning, no runs, 2 strikeouts, good stuff from Scott Barlow. The 2 that really stood out the most to me, let's start with Maikel Garcia, because he has been quite good as of late. And I know he is Fulton's guy, and Fulton is over the moon about how well Maikel Garcia is playing. But if you want to go back over his last 6 games, 6-game hitting streak for the young infielder, he's gone 11 of 25. That's a .440 batting average in the last 6 games. Getting on base, stealing bases, that speed is a legitimate weapon. The concern with him is that he just doesn't hit for any amount of power. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of pop. At least he hasn't expressed a whole lot of pop so far, which you don't love from a corner infielder, and he's been at third base so far. Maybe there's a position change coming up at some point in his future to more fit that profile. But I'm not going to complain about those kinds of things when I see a player for this team who is playing really well on the offensive end. This is one of those sparks that the Royals have been looking for. Someone who is going to do something that energizes you, that galvanizes you, and whether that's just getting on base, stealing bases, scoring runs on exciting plays, whatever it is, that's the kind of thing this Royals team has been missing all year and has been looking for all year.
When we've talked about the young core of the Royals, obviously we've started that discussion by talking about the guys who came up last year, because those felt like the headline names. Witt and Pasquantino and Melendez and Prado, kind of a part of that group as well. All of those guys made their big league debuts last year. Drew Waters did as well. Maikel Garcia is only 23 years old. Like, he's in this conversation with these guys. And I know we're still very early in the process for him, but we've talked about Baseball Savant, the website on this page, this website on this radio show before. You can go and see a lot of the data, right? Batted ball data, sprint speed data, the stuff that's not observable maybe, but is measurable. And the measurable stuff, we've talked about red dots are good on the Baseball Savant page and blue dots are bad. Whole lot of red.
Yep.
On Maikel Garcia's Baseball Savant page. So at the very least, the measurable data supports what he's done offensively to this point. The data also suggests that he is an elite defender at third base. He has played at a really high level defensively. Now, you're right to be concerned about the power. He does have 2 home runs. But what I talked about yesterday, maybe a good hitter can develop power. More so than you can expect perhaps a good power producer to develop into a good hitter. a good hitter can potentially develop power. Now, you'd like your third baseman to have a little more pop even than Garcia might eventually develop. But if he's going to provide you a plus glove over there, then maybe you can live with it a little bit. Or maybe long-term, he's a second base option rather than a third base option. I used to think maybe he's a shortstop option, but Bobby Witt Jr. has improved his defense enough that I think he can stick over there. But yeah, like the offensive stuff, the offensive production, that looks real. And he stole 3 bases last night, including taking second and third, which is the reason the Royals won the game in the ninth. Part of a night that saw the Royals steal 7 bases.
Love it.
7 for 7.
Love it.
On the base pass. The Royals are third in the American League as a team in stolen bases. They got 7 bags last night.
And they're not getting on base as much as some other teams.
No, they're sure not. So they certainly were committed to the running game. MJ Melendez had a couple of steals, doubling his season total going in last night. Wow. He's now up to 4 steals after he swiped 2 last night. Samad Taylor got his first. Drew Waters got his first as well. Those kinds of little things, like marginal things that you can do to give yourself a better chance to win ball games. Like, it felt like a mid-2010s Royals game a little bit in that way. They got the home run from Waters, but they only got 1 other extra base hit. This was a game that they won because they got the timely hit from Waters late to tie up the game, and they manufactured a run out of Garcia reaching base, stealing twice, and scoring on the infield hit. They manufactured the winning run in the 9th inning. That felt like old school Royals baseball. It was a nice welcome return to that. And Garcia being at the heart of that is very exciting. MJ had a big night last night. 3 hits, 2 runs batted in, also drew a walk. The thing with Melendez continues to be, can he cut down, get the strikeouts back to where they were last year as a rookie? He's striking out 30% of the time this year. But he only struck out 24% of the time as a rookie. And that was a pretty big sample size. It's not like we're talking about like, oh, he had a 40 at bat cup of coffee. Like, he was up for 4 months and he struck out 24% of the time. If he were striking out 6% less with the measurable exit velocities that he has, with the batting average on balls in play that he has produced this year, Melendez would be a whole lot closer to a league average offensive player so far this year. That's the difference, because when he does put the ball in play, good things tend to happen. He's just got to start doing that a little bit more often for Melendez to really contribute, because he has to be, I don't think just above average. I think he has to be a well above average offensive contributor, because the outfield experiment is not coming along swiftly, you could say.
2 errors, 1 fielding, 1 throwing last night for MJ. You know, that's at some point, if he does not find a way to get markedly better in the field, because markedly better at this point would be like league average, you're going to end up at a spot where somebody is probably going to have to get moved, because you're going to have Vinny, who's the first baseman or a DH. I mean, there's nowhere else you're putting him.
Nick Prado's valuable at first base.
Prado can play first, can DH. You probably don't want to put him back in the outfield. Salvi is going to DH more and more as his career goes on, to keep him fresh and playable and healthy. And then Melendez, you're going to want to have DH. That's a lot of dudes for one spot.
This is probably a conversation that we pocket for a rainy day or an off day somewhere down the line. But, and I'm not saying this is something that's an urgent need for the Royals to do, but is the guy that needs to get moved MJ Melendez? Like, is that a guy? Like, you're not, obviously, if you went to market with MJ Melendez tomorrow, you're not really selling high, but there's some things to like there. But the bar for him to help the Royals is really high, because it feels, as you've outlined, that if he's going to play, it's going to be in right field. Like, if he's going to be a Kansas City Royal, he's going to be the right fielder and the emergency catcher. Like, that's his role right now. And he's bad enough, frankly, defensively, that he needs to really, really hit. Like, the power needs to come back. The strikeouts need to be cut. And if you think he can get there, like, I'm not ruling it out. We're still so early in his big league career that I'm uncomfortable saying, oh, this is just the hitter he's going to be, or saying this is just the outfielder he's going to be. But is he the guy that you say, hey, maybe, there's another team that he's a more natural fit for because he can catch there or he can DH there more often. And maybe that team has a similar young player that they maybe have a surplus to requirements with, like, say, a starting pitcher, for example. And maybe find a match there. I'm not, again, that's an idly tossed off idea that maybe deserves more exploring than we can give it right now. The kind of exploring you can do on an off day, let's say. But it's an interesting conversation, I think, that can be had around that, because I do think, like, right now, he's carrying a 659 OPS and sub-average defense in the outfield, and that's not only is that not a valuable player, it's a player that is kind of hurting you. But I don't think he's that player over the course of the longer haul, because I think the offense is going to come if he can get the strikeouts back to even just where they were last year. He doesn't have to completely change his stripes as a hitter. He just has to make more contact.
This isn't an apples to apples comparison with another current major leaguer, but a guy who does pop into my head as a partial comp for Melendez is Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber also strikes out a lot. He's striking out nearly 29% this year. He is a converted catcher who has improved as an outfielder and is still probably like among the 10% of the worst outfielders in all of baseball. He had a dropped fly ball yesterday that, man, like, freshman high schoolers all across the country should be making. Like, it was bad. And it may have cost the Phillies the game, or at least they got blown out. They may not have had he ended that inning. But he makes up for it, even though he doesn't hit for a very high average at all. In fact, I don't even know what his batting average is this year. 187, but he freaking mashes.
He hits a ton of home runs.
He hits a ton of home runs. His isolated power is crazy high. Weighted runs created, OPM. I mean, all these numbers are huge because he's crushing the ball. I'm not saying MJ Melendez is going to be, like the next Adam Dunn, where, hey, you're only going to hit 200 and you're not really playable in the field, but you're going to hit 40 home runs, so we'll live with that. I don't think that's going to be him. I don't think that needs to be him, but that's sort of what I think of, where you've got this clear deficiency in the field, but you can make up for it by being productive enough at the plate that you're still a core member of this team. Right now, he's not that, but he's still young enough and still new enough, as you've pointed out, in his major league career that he can get to that point. I just hope that he does develop that. And this month has been better. He has been much better at the plate this month than certainly the 2 months prior. The other guy, by the way, I wanted to touch on from last night, maybe he's not going to be a starter like I was hoping. I think the Royals have something here with Austin Cox. And this feels different because his sample size is still fairly small, although he went almost 4 innings yesterday, 3 2/3, only allowed 2 hits, first hit he's allowed in his career, 1 walk, struck out 4, still has not allowed an earned run this season in, again, small sample size. But this feels different than, say, Mike Myers and his small sample size of 3 good outings. Because Mike Myers, for his career, as we laid out, has been a fringe major league guy. Like, he's never been all that good. He looked really good for 3 outings, and then suddenly he came crashing back down to earth. We knew that the regression was coming at some point. It just came far more aggressively and far more quickly than what I was expecting. We don't have that baseline with Austin Cox. As far as we know, this is what Austin Cox is. Not going to shut out opponents for the entirety of a season, but he can be a long relief or, maybe a 5-inning starter or, a great back of the bullpen guy, whatever he can be. He's been awesome so far. And I want to see more of that.
I'll confess that last night was only the second time I've gotten to see an Austin Cox outing. I remember his debut, and I got to watch him a little bit last night. The thing that you notice when you watch Austin Cox is not that he has, like, overwhelming stuff. Like, there's not an overpowering fastball. There's not what looks to be like an elite swing and miss breaking ball, though he has gotten some really good success with his curveball and his cutter to this point. He's gotten a lot of swings and misses on those. That's the thing that does jump out. Not that he's got elite stuff, but that guys are doing a lot of swinging and missing against him. They had more swings and misses against Cox last night than Shane McClanahan, who might be the best pitcher in the American League. And Cox had more swings and misses against him than McClanahan did in his time on the mound last night. So 11 and a third innings of no hit ball to start your career is not the kind of thing that happens on accident. There's something here. Now, what that something is, I'm not as maybe convinced as you that it's not a starter role over the long haul, because he held up pretty good over 3 2/3 last night, and we'll see if they stretch him out and give him a look in the rotation. I kind of hope they do.
I do too. I absolutely hope they do that.
But and the fact that he doesn't have the overwhelming stuff, and that he does have, the 4-pitch mix, that's a starter's repertoire more so than it's a reliever's repertoire to me. But the success is undeniable, and it's at the level, again, 11 and a third no-hit innings. Like, what in the world? It's at the level that, you're officially intrigued by this guy. He's doing it from the left side, and he seems to be giving hitters some fits, because they're swinging and missing a lot more than you think if you just say, oh, yeah, it's a 92-mile-an-hour fastball. Then, like, baseball savant, again, red good, blue bad. There's blue on his fastball. It's not, like, stuff-wise, data-wise, an overwhelming pitch. But doesn't mean you can't have some success with it. If it's moving, which it appears to be, have some pretty good movement on it. And I like that he locates it up in the zone effectively. That's the one thing that I thought was interesting about how he pitches, is the fastball's up and the changeup's down and away. It's well located. It's consistent stuff. His command has been pretty solid. So good early returns for a young Royals pitcher, and it's been a while since we've been able to say that.
Yeah, that's exciting. And again, I hope it continues. I'd love to see him get stretched out and even get 5 innings to try to start a game, find that 5th spot in the rotation. He's earned it as much as anyone has at this point. I would love to certainly see more of that going forward. We've got plenty more 580 Sports Talk to get to today. We do have a shortened show off at 5 o'clock, but we've got plenty to get in the next hour and a half. Let's take a quick break. When we come on back on the other side of this timeout, though, we'll play Change My Mind here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk, with you till 5 today. We'll talk to Matt Derrick coming up in just a little bit. for our Chiefs Insiders, what we do at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour every Friday afternoon. But before we get there, let's play our weekly round of Change My Mind. We'll talk more NBA draft, specifically relating to our local guys coming up a little bit later on in the 4 o'clock hour. Dan, change my mind. There was, let's see, what number do I want to go with here? There was one All-Star drafted in the first round last night. Future All-Star, obviously.
There were 2 All-Stars drafted last night because I think Scoot Henderson is going to be an All-Star.
That's fair.
I think he's a Russell Westbrook type of player who is going to be really, really good, and it will be fascinating to see if Portland tries to play him with Damian Lillard or if they just trade Damian Lillard. I think it's going to be the latter.
Really?
I do. I think they're gonna move Dame.
I think it is awesome that Dame wants to be in Portland and wants to be a one-team guy and wants to win. I genuinely think that is really cool, and I've loved Dame's game ever since he came into the league. I also think that I would like to see him in Miami because I would like to see him with a real star and Jimmy Butler with a real supporting cast who's not like the softest player in the league, like Karl Anthony Towns. Mm-hmm. Softest on the court, for the record. That might cost him Bam Adebayo. I don't know. But they're in an interesting spot right now. You would think, like in the NFL, big trades get done before the draft so that you can replace guys that way. The NBA does it the opposite way. So now Portland's got a guy who they hope is a superstar and then an actual superstar that they got to figure out what they're doing with.
So I think Scoot Henderson is going to be an all-star. I think Victor Wembanyama is going to be one of the best players in the league for as long as his body allows him to be one of the best players in the league. But yeah, man, it was a weird draft last night. It was either like an 18-year-old with like freakish athleticism and a broken jump shot, or a 23-year-old who can play and be somebody's 8th man right away, but that's their ceiling as a player. That felt like the entire draft to me. Like a bunch of future 7th or 8th guys who are already in their mid-20s or like underwear Olympics champions, which is more of a football term for the NFL combine, but they got an NBA combine now. So you get what you get. Like Anthony Black went number 6 in last night's draft out of Arkansas. And I saw him play in person in Des Moines at the NCAA tournament. And I could not tell you one thing Anthony Black did that made me go, oh yeah, that's a lottery pick.
You and I were sitting next to each other at that game. All game it was, man, Jordan Walsh is a pest, or God, Devo Davis is tough as hell and makes every shot. Or it was, man, Ricky Council, you can see why every team in the country wanted him as a transfer to Wichita State. Like all of these dudes are making plays. Anthony Black, I think, got in foul trouble, and I don't remember a single thing he did.
No, not one. He was underwhelming in their round 1 game, too. Like, he had 20 against UConn, but that game was a blowout. He scored a bunch of points in garbage time. Like, that was the 6th pick in the draft. A guy who, and look, I'm not saying I'm, Jerry Krause, right? Like, I'm not auditioning to be an NBA GM, but if you're going to be a lottery pick, shouldn't you stand out, like, in every game you play?
Well, you want to talk about a team that had a terrible draft overall? I think the Magic had an awful draft. Anthony Black, I guess, like, he's tall and can dribble and has fun hair. Like, okay.
Well, they got a bunch of guards already that can't shoot, and they drafted a guy who shot 30% from 3 in his only year in college.
And then they drafted Jet Howard from Michigan, who I know all year was talked about, like, oh, definite first rounder, maybe a lottery pick. Really? Like, I don't know, man.
How does Michigan have 2 lottery picks and Hunter Dickinson and miss the NCAA tournament? Either Juwan Howard's the worst coach in the country, which, I mean, I don't think he's a great coach.
Yeah.
But maybe, just maybe, these guys are just like hoopers, or like they got a bag or whatever it is, but they're not like, are they going to help teams? Are they going to be great NBA players? I didn't see a lot of those guys in this draft. Like Gradey Dick. Gradey Dick, you watched him, and again, I watched a lot more Gradey Dick games than I did Anthony Black games. But I watched Gradey Dick, and you could see, like, right away, oh, yeah, this is the skill that's going to make him a lottery pick. He's 6'8". His shot is unblockable and lightning quick, and he makes it all the time. Like, that's a lottery pick. That's obvious.
There's a reason he was the guy who got face guarded for KU. Like,
yes.
There's a reason teams try to take it. Like, I look at a guy like Grady, and people are going to laugh at this comp because I know, haha, the white guy who shoots threes. But, like, he's a slightly smaller Kyle Korver who I think can get downhill better. Like, That's an incredible career. Kyle Korver played for like 34 years in the NBA.
He did.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just don't know that that's an all-star. Like the Thompson twins, they went 4 and 5. Man, I saw some highlights of them. I've never seen a more broken jump shot. Like they went to basketball school, and like I don't think they can really play.
They really didn't. They went to TikTok influencer camp and played basketball.
Specialized in hoops.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that like basketball dweebs online really love that Overtime Elite program. I don't know, man.
We'll see.
I wouldn't want to see these kids try to like do their taxes.
We'll see. Like these guys are the litmus test for it, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
They seem like good kids, fairly well adjusted. And then again, their dad was saying they better make first team all rookie. Like, so we'll see. We'll see how well adjusted they really are. But no, I see 2 all-stars in this draft. I see like there are a bunch of guys. Like I think Chris Murray's going to be a good role player. I love the Nuggets pick of Julian Strother. Big Andre Jackson Jr. fan. Think he's going to have a good career. Like there are a bunch of guys. You mentioned Jordan Walsh's name. I think he'll be a good role player in the NBA. I think there are a bunch of guys like that, but I don't think there's all-star ceiling, or at the very least, I don't think there's a lot of guys real likely to hit their all-star ceiling.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I agree. I do think Victor Wembanyama is going to be good, though.
I think Victor's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And shout out to Big Vic for saying the first thing he wants to do when he gets down to San Antonio is hunt down some breakfast tacos, because that tells me he's done his research and his priorities are firmly in order, because I've never had better breakfast tacos in my life than I have in San Antonio.
Oh, yeah, they were delicious. You took us to a place when we were there for the Final Four.
Taco, yeah, the Final Four.
Oh, my God. Incredible. Absolutely delicious. Do you have a change my mind today?
That was mine.
Oh,
so,
perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, with that, then, let's get to a quick break. Matt Derrick's going to hop on with us next on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline right here on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim Chesko with your money now. Stocks finished firmly.
name is Matt.
Are you ready?
My name is Matt.
Let's go.
His name is Matt Derrick, and he covers the Kansas City Chiefs better than anybody and does so over at ChiefsDigest.com. He joins us here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline for our weekly Chiefs Insider. Make sure you're following Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick, and of course, heading over to check out all of the Chiefs content at ChiefsDigest.com. What's going on, Matt? How are you?
I am doing pretty well, Brendan. How are you doing?
Doing well. Glad it is Friday here. Did you tune in last night to the NBA draft to see your guy Kobe Brown from Mizzou get drafted right at the end of the first round?
I did not tune in, but I was following along on Twitter to see if Kobe got drafted, so that was pretty nice. And I couldn't really not be following along on Twitter and not see Gradey Dick and all of that. The love for his outfit last night. So, I mean, I think he's got a great career as a figure skater, but he's a pretty good basketball player too.
I was going to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, and in, figure skating terms, we can use decimals here. How would you grade young Gradey Dick's suit last night?
I mean, I guess I don't know what he was trying to accomplish, but I guess, if I can imagine what he was trying to accomplish, and I would probably give that a 9.8.
Okay.
Yeah, based on what I think is, a good decision, probably more like a 2.3.
Do you think that Mahomes could pull off that suit? Like if Mahomes had worn that to the ring day, for instance, just gone all red.
Yeah, you take Mahomes and Kelsey, those two guys could get away with fashion murder. And if they had worn that, I guarantee you that suit would be sold out everywhere today.
The shoulder pads were a nice touch, I thought.
And people would be wearing it without socks and everything else that Mahomes does. So
shoulder pads. Somebody on Twitter said he looked like Paula Poundstone in '93 with the shoulder pads.
I saw a lot of
pretty accurate.
Matt, I don't know if you've ever watched The Righteous Gemstones on HBO, but a lot of people said he looked like BJ, Judy Gemstone's husband.
I was not aware of The Righteous Gemstones until the other night, and I was shown a clip, and so now I have a greater appreciation for that than I could possibly have had before. Thank you.
He's just becoming a more dope him in the process.
Yeah, hey, you all of a sudden have many millions of dollars and an Instagram follow from Drake, and you get to go live in a foreign country. Like I'd live it up too. I would ball out with the outfit too. Matt, thanks for playing along with that. We do have some Chiefs to get to today. We talked a lot last week about when is the deal going to get done with Chris Jones, and at what point is he going to sign on the dotted line, show up at training camp, etc. So I'm curious, since we've kind of assumed sometime right before or early in training camp is when this will get done, what part of the process do you think the Chiefs are in right now? Do you think they are actively calling Chris Jones and his representation every day, working on things, or right now do you think it's more of a we'll get there when we get there kind of approach?
I would not be surprised if Brett Veach was checking in with the Katz brothers, his agents, every single day, trying to just to find out where they're at and everything. And I kind of wonder what kind of response that Brett's getting. We've talked about it. I mean, this kind of time of year is usually a dead period, so even agents and front offices take off. But when you got a player who's got a contract to work on, you usually are working through your break. But at this point, we're still working under the assumption, at least from what I've been told, that there's just not a lot of communication between the two sides right now. That it's really Chris's side that wants to wait and see what happens with the market, and if the Quentin Williams deal gets done, and there's just not a lot of motivation. And for the Chiefs, they don't have to get something done immediately. They have to get something done soon. But it doesn't have to be on June 23rd. It can be July 15th. It can be July 18th. They just, I don't think, want it to be August 10th. That's when it gets to be more of a problem.
Along that defensive line, there has been a little bit of chatter recently about the Chiefs maybe adding another veteran defensive end. I know Carlos Dunlap, for example, he gave an interview with Forbes recently where he said, I'm open to playing still. I'm open to returning to the Chiefs. They've expressed some interest, but it hasn't really gone anywhere as of yet. I was a little surprised by that. I wouldn't be opposed necessarily. But given the fact that they drafted two defensive ends, they signed Charles Omenihu, Karlaftis is a nailed-on starter for the long-term future. How surprised would you be if the Chiefs did try to add another veteran to that edge group?
Right now, I would be a little surprised for all of the reasons that you've identified. I mean, the Chiefs have got some developmental projects. I mean, they've got some guys that they're going to have to protect a little bit this year. And that, I mean, I don't think you want to throw George Karlaftis into suddenly having to be an 80% snap guy. I think you'd like to help him, grow, develop, mature a little bit. Charles Omenihu has never been that kind of guy. I mean, he's been a rotational piece, so you want to protect him. Obviously, they're going to protect Felix as a rookie. They don't want to throw him into the deep end immediately. They want to do a rotation, and the problem is that they've just got a lot of guys right now. I mean, you add in B.J. Thompson as the draft pick, and I can get you the 5 defensive ends on this roster pretty easily. And do they have room for a 6th? Well, then you're talking about you still even have Joshua Kaindoh, Malik Herring in the mix. I mean, there's not a desperate need for a veteran right now. I think that the conversations, my gut is telling me that it's more along the lines of the same ones they had with Frank Clark, which is, hey, Frank, right price, right time, love to have you back. I think that's probably the same way with Carlos Dunlap too. If they go into camp, get an injury, something happens, I think Dunlap is the first player they call.
Our guest is Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He is our Chiefs insider. He joins us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline every Friday at this time to talk all things from the Chiefs kingdom. You can check out his work at ChiefsDigest.com. Find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Matt, Patrick Mahomes has raved about this group of wide receivers that he has had a chance to work with. Not just the ones who are nailed onto the NFL roster, but the guys who are fighting for wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6 as we head into training camp eventually here. Of the wide receivers that the Chiefs have on the 90-man roster, how many of those guys do you think legitimately could be contributing NFL wide receivers, either in Kansas City or in a different scenario? How many legit NFL wide receivers do you think are on the 90-man roster right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I'm trying to answer right now, I'm working on a 53-player roster projection that'll be up tonight. And and really trying to deal with exactly that prospect. I mean, I write in here that I think there's 9 receivers who legitimately have a case to make this roster. Some of them, because they have special teams value, certainly some because of their fit. But it's going to be tough to shake out this room. And, I think there's going to be 4 spots for sure that, barring injury, are taken. I mean, Valdez-Scantling, Tony, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, they're going to make the roster. I think Justin Watson's probably going to make the roster because he's more expensive to cut than to keep. That's 5 right there. Who's going to be your 6th? I mean, right now, Rich James has the best resume. But John Ross and Justin Ross are both incredibly talented players and with a lot of upside. And, one's got speed and the one's got a lot of athleticism and height. And then, Amir Smith-Marset, hey, if he ended up being the punt returner, he's got some value. He was with the team last year. I think it's when you get down to Cornell Powell that I'm like, okay, probably not strong enough for this room. Practice squad candidates for sure, and there's a few guys. I mean, Kakoa Crawford, the guy that they just signed, I think fits in that category too. Some guys that maybe are just prospects or, emergency players. But I think there's 9 receivers who legitimately have a case that could make this roster. And certainly if, injuries pile up, that certainly happens.
How much of the Justin Ross hype is real, and how much of it is just based on what we all remember seeing him do as a freshman in the college football playoff?
Yeah, that's a really nice question, because I want to say that I think the realness of it is maybe 60%. Remember, we've never seen Justin Ross in pads. I mean, we've never seen him in a training camp. We're projecting all of this when in a passing camp where you can't hit anybody. I mean, as I've said, it's great that he's impressing people right now, because if you can't impress me in June in an OTA, in a mini camp, when you can't get hit as a receiver, you're certainly not going to impress me when the pads come on. So it's a great first step. But, how progressed is he? How much of the offense has he picked up? That's a lot of questions to me that still need to be answered. And we will need to find out, what kind of player he is, after all of the injuries, after all the issues and some of the layoff that he's had once they start hitting each other. I mean, that's a tough question to answer. So, like I said, I think it's real. There's a lot of athleticism. His size is legit. His hands are legit. He's got a great catch radius. But to me, I mean, he's got to show me more. I think he's got potential, but I haven't seen enough yet.
Matt Derrick joins us here on 580 Sports Talk on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. It is our Chiefs Insider. We do it every single Friday at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour. Go find Matt on Twitter at Matt Derrick and check out his work at ChiefsDigest.com covering all things Kansas City Chiefs. To continue the thought about this wide receiver room, Matt, I'm curious because I think we're at a point where, the Chiefs aren't going to just say we're going to only throw scraps in this wide receiver room out on the field, but you don't need an elite receiver to win when Mahomes is on your team, when Kelsey's on your team, and when Andy Reid is calling plays. And we know that because the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl without one of those guys in the receiver room. But of these guys who are fighting for roster spots or are, likely going to make the roster, but might not be, quote unquote wide receiver one, who actually has legitimate rotational upside? Like guys you say, no, this could be a long-term starter for us or somewhere in the NFL. And let's take Tony out because I think we know, I don't know if he'll ever reach it, but he's obviously got huge athletic upside. Who after that do you think really has that look that they might be able to become a long-term NFL starter?
Yeah, it's a good question too, because I have a hard time still projecting. I'm not sure. I mean, Sky Moore and Rashee Rice clearly have a lot of potential. I'm not sure how much of, Rashee Rice will get a chance to realize that this year. And we've talked about it before as far as, rookie receivers in this system and for Andy Reid. I mean, unless you're an elite receiver and, you're Jeremy Maclin or Deshaun Jackson, you don't necessarily get every down opportunities. You're going to be a rotational piece. And, and Rashee Rice could absolutely find himself in a valuable role this year, but it doesn't mean he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. This is going to be a big year for me for Sky Moore. I mean, we're going to learn a lot about him. He's going to be, I think, get the opportunity to maybe become that player. Maybe not a 1,000-yard receiver this year, but if he is going to become the player that the Chiefs hope that he can, and that his upside suggests that he can be. I mean, I think would have to be the leading receiver this year. I mean, we know what Marquez Valdez-Scantling is. He's kind of baked into me. He is what he is. And he's a good receiver, but is he a number one guy? No. So to me, if Sky Moore has a breakout year and all of a sudden, he's got 800 yards, 6 touchdowns, that to me is going to be a sign that he's ready for the future. So, but I think he's the best equipped this year to break out. Now that's setting aside Richie James, who I think is honestly probably the best overall receiver in this room right now. I mean, I don't know if he's going to fit. I don't know if the chemistry is going to be good. I don't know if he's going to pick up the offense fast enough, but that's the guy who's probably the sleeper for me.
We'll touch on that more as we get closer to camp and as camp gets started. And we're a little pressed for time here, Matt, so we have about a minute. What makes you say that James is the best all-around receiver? What is it about his game or his profile that has stood out in that way to you?
He's been in a couple of different stops and he has performed well. I mean, certainly last year was his breakout season, but you've seen him adapt to a couple of different offenses. You've seen him adapt to different roles. He's been a downfield receiver at times. He's been a possession receiver. That kind of versatility is very valuable in the Andy Reid system, especially if you want to play a lot, you need to be able to play all 3 positions. And certainly his numbers last year, he's got to repeat that. And, we don't know for sure that last year was just an outlier year or it was the sign of something to come. But you look at his numbers and you look at the success that Daniel Jones had going to him, his catch rate, the number of drops that he had. I mean, that was an all around incredibly spectacular season last year. I mean, you feel like if the Giants had thrown the ball even a little bit more, maybe they might have had even more success because that was the kind of year he had. The metrics would suggest that he's got untapped potential at this level, which is something that I'm not sure that you could say about all of the other guys.
Matt Derrick covers the Kansas City Chiefs better than anybody, and all of his work can be found at ChiefsDigest.com. You can also follow him on Twitter. Would absolutely recommend that. His handle is @MattDerrick, and he joins us at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour every Friday right here on 580 Sports Talk for our Chiefs Insider. Matt, we appreciate the time as always, my friend. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Sounds great. Take care, everybody.
That is Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. That does it for the 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. Coming up in the final 4 o'clock hour of the show, we'll recap last night's NBA draft, get you some headlines, what is wrong with you, and more on 580 Sports Talk. week. 1 hour to go today on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. Thanks so much for swinging by, spending part of this week with us. We appreciate it so much, as always. We're still taking your texts and your comments on the YouTube stream throughout the show. Let us know your thoughts on anything we're talking about today. Text line number is 785-272-9429. And the YouTube channel that we're broadcasting on every single day with the live show is called Sports on 580 WIBW. So stop by, drop a comment, let us know what you're thinking about the show today. Coming up here in this 4 o'clock and final hour, because we're done early for Royals baseball, we will get to some reaction to the NBA draft last night. We'll find our weekly winner in What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. And we will send you into the weekend with the biggest 580 Sports Talk headlines in the world of sports today. That's all coming up over the course of the next hour. So let's just dive right in. We got a lot to get to here in the next, now 53 minutes or so. NBA draft last night. The three guys we expected from KU and K-State ended up indeed getting drafted. And we expected Marquise Noel would sign pretty quickly with the team, and that he did. He signed with the Toronto Raptors, which is also where Gradey Dick went. So let's just start with that one. 13th overall pick in the draft. I really did think it was going to be Orlando for Gradey Dick. They went Jet Howard instead. Best of luck to them, I guess.
There's a reason Orlando picks in the lottery every year.
Yeah.
The teams that pick in the lottery every year, there's a reason they pick in the lottery every year.
Where did Jet Howard finish on the all Big Ten teams last year? Was it first team? I have a hard time imagining it was.
Let's see. I got the 2023 all conference honors right now. He was not on the first team.
Third team.
He was not on the second team. Yeah.
Sometimes that happens because guys are these crazy freak athletes, but they may not perform at the college level, or they get hurt, or, they're a better pro player than college player, whatever. Like I said earlier, there was never any point where I said, oh, yeah, Jet Howard, that's a can't-miss guy.
There were 3 third-team All-Big Ten players who were drafted before the first-team All-Big Ten player. Jet Howard, Kobe Buffkin, and Jalen Hood-Schifino all got picked before Chris Murray.
Interesting. I'm surprised Hood-Schifino only made third team last year, honestly. I thought he had a pretty good season.
I'm surprised he got drafted 17th overall.
Well, yeah, there's probably that too. So Gradey Dick ends up going 13th. He's going to Toronto. I think this is a great fit for him in a lot of ways. Maybe not a perfect fit. It is a new coach. That roster sounds like they're going to try to run it back at least somewhat. Pascal Siakam doesn't want to leave. Sounds like they are still certainly going to be in the hunt to keep Fred VanVleet. They don't really have a whole lot else. They have OG Anunoby. There's not really a whole lot else going on with that Toronto roster. But I do know this. They were the second worst three-point shooting team in the NBA last year. They didn't take very many, and they didn't make very many. They need shooting help. They need spacing help. They need it badly. Enter maybe the best pure shooter in the NBA draft in Gradey Dick. There's not someone on that Toronto team that is a great creator. In college, he played with one of the best creators for others in the country in DeJuan Harris. He's going to get you the ball. He's going to get it to you in a good spot, good space, and you're going to have a chance to shoot, drive, take a number, whatever. That's not necessarily the case in Toronto right now. There's not that kind of top-level facilitator. So you make this Gradey try to create for himself a little bit more than he would have in other spots. But I think he's going to get to play a lot. I mean, he might be their sixth man immediately. And he's going to come off the bench, play 25 minutes, and shoot a ton of threes. I think he's going to play a bunch in Toronto. I think it's a pretty good landing spot for him.
Toronto went 41-41 last year, and I don't think they have a particularly awesome roster. They don't really have a true center. That's a problem. Although they did they trade for Jakob Poeltl, or they trade away Jakob Poeltl? I think they traded for him, so maybe he's their guy. But they certainly need shooting, and that is what Gradey Dick's going to bring day one. Like, when you are drafting a player, you're looking at what is their carrying trait going to be, their carrying tool. They talk a lot about that in baseball with regard to the baseball draft. You hear that phrase thrown around. What's the carrying tool? What's the tool that's going to get a guy to the major leagues? Well, in basketball, what's the tools going to get this guy on the floor? And for Gradey Dick, that's obvious. It is his shooting. Now, I think he does enough other stuff well that's going to make him more than just a, catch and shoot option, certainly. But from day one, that is what he can be, is somebody who gives a Toronto team that finished 9th in the East last year, just missed out on qualifying for the playoffs, lost the play-in game. He is, to me, going to be somebody who plays quite a bit right away and helps them out with their biggest weakness.
Yeah. I love that for him. And I think that's an interesting spot, too, for Noel to sign with, because, look, you want to talk about a team that doesn't really have a great point guard setup, doesn't really have a creator, and is going to have a lot of new looks because they've got a brand new head coach. Sounds like a good team for a UDFA, to be completely honest with you. A UDFA who, by the way, led the best conference in college basketball in assists last year. So I like that for Marquise. I think that's a good spot for him to land, too. And we'll get to see Marquise Noel throwing passes to Gradey Dick in the corner for 3 in the summer league. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
Excited for that.
So here are the guys who played point guard last year for the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
Fred VanVleet, obviously.
Yeah.
Free agent. I think he's going to get some big offers. I think Toronto would love to keep him. I mean, he was an all-star, not this past season, but the season before.
Yeah.
Only 28. I'm sure Toronto would love to keep him.
Not really a true point either, but obviously can handle that.
I lied. He's 29. But yeah, he's
still washed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the dividing line.
Yeah.
28, 29. The other guys who played point for the Raptors last year, Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton, real person.
Whomst?
Yeah, real person.
Delano Banton?
Yes, Delano Banton out of Nebraska. Canadian guy.
Man, if you told me, I'm looking at his picture right now. If you told me this guy was like selling holistic medicine at a roadside stand, I'd say that's more likely than he played point guard in the NBA.
Yeah, so Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton, and somebody named Jeff Doughton, who I also have never heard of before, who was on a two-way. So what I'm saying is Toronto's point guard situation is anything but set in stone. And Marquise Noel's going to have a chance, I think, to maybe carve out a roster spot here, because Doughton was on a two-way deal, which is the same contract that Marquise Noel is poised to sign with the Raptors. Doughton played 25 games for him last year. So I think we're going to see Marquise Noel in the NBA on this roster next year, especially if they don't keep VanVleet.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see him in the league. I really do.
Honestly, it might be out of necessity based on that group that they might need to add a point guard, and he's just the one who's there.
And this is the thing. This is especially true in football, but I think it also applies to basketball in a shorter draft, that sometimes it's better to not get drafted towards the very end of the draft and pick your spot. Because when you don't get drafted, you might have 3-4 teams call you up, say, hey, we'd love to offer you a two-way deal. We'd love to bring you to Summer League. And for Marquise Noel, it's hard to imagine a much better situation than being on a team with no current starting point guard, whose backup point guard options are fringe pros. Like, that to me is pretty enticing if I'm Marquise Noel and trying to get to the NBA.
It's a good spot for both of them. I like that. I like the draft for Toronto a lot. I saw USA Today gave them an A-. Draft grades are stupid. We've never seen these guys play in the pros before, but I agree. I think it worked out pretty well for them. Jalen Wilson, Keyontae Johnson, they both go in the early 50s. Definitely a little later than we thought Jalen Wilson would go. That's probably about where we expected for Keyontae Johnson. Keyontae went first. They went back-to-back picks, in fact. Keyontae is going 50th to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, the story is incredible. We all know that at this point for Keyontae, that is his, it is the next chapter in this unbelievable road after recovery and career he has put together. That's a really young team, which is probably going to have plenty of playing time available. They've got some young stars, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Josh Giddey, I don't think is a star, but is a really good young NBA player. Maybe one day he will get to that star caliber. I'm not going to lie and say I know everything about what Oklahoma City likes to do on both ends. I don't know exactly what the fit is. Like, it's not as natural as, wow, Toronto is a terrible three-point shooting team. They added a great three-point shooter. Fit, A+. I don't think it's quite that easy with Keyontae in Oklahoma City, but they clearly liked him enough to take a flyer on him in the latter part of the second round. And I think his skill set is versatile enough that they will find a way to get something useful out of him. I don't know that he's going to play a ton, but I do feel like he can carve out some kind of role.
So they don't really have a player like him, like I guess the closest thing is probably Lou Dort, the kid out of Arizona State.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have a guy like him that combines his size, 6'5", 6'6", with his like bulk. They got a lot of lanky dudes, like Giddey's 6'8", 210. Obviously, Chet Holmgren is the king of lanky dudes, is going to make his debut next year. SGA 6'6", 180. Like they've got a lot of like lanky dudes. They don't have a lot of, I think, physicality in the backcourt. But what they have is a lot of different guys who play different ways, different styles, and a lot of depth at the guard positions. They can throw a bunch of different stuff at you. So Keyontae Johnson's going to kind of fit into that idea of being a change of pace at the 2 or at the 3 for them, where he's a little bit bigger and a little bit more physical on offense. He can back you down and he can score in the mid-range. They don't really have the piece that is quite like that, but they have collected, Oklahoma City has, a lot of guards who have, like, there's not a lot that SGA has in common with Josh Giddey, who has in common with Jalen Williams, who has in common with Lou Dort, who has in common with, like,
the other Jalen Williams.
Yeah, Kenrich Williams. Not a lot of, like, stylistic similarities there with that collection of guys, but that's kind of the idea, is that they can switch it up and they can give you a bunch of different looks. And Keyontae Johnson, I think, adds to their collection of wings who can give you something different, something a little bit unique from whatever else they have on their roster. That's a team that's on the come. They won 40 games last year. Everybody thought they were going to be just the dreck of the Western Conference, particularly when Chet Holmgren wasn't going to play all year. And they ended up winning 40 games and just missing the play-in. So that's an exciting roster. That's a roster on the rise. That's a team that probably is a playoff team in the West next year. And Keyontae, I think, has a chance to contribute to that.
That'd be cool. And again, I mean, the story is awesome. Very excited to see him go off the board when he did. And, the nice thing, too, is that a lot of more people get to hear about what he has been through, the kind of guy he is, the kind of year he had at K-State. So, no, very happy for him. And the same goes for Jalen Wilson, too. He goes one pick later, Brooklyn Nets. This one is interesting to me because I feel like, again, it's so much about, can someone at this part of the draft use what your specific skill set is? And when you're bringing in Jalen Wilson, you're taking an older player who has a lot of experience, is a proven winner, has a winning attitude, isn't exactly a great defender, but is going to give you effort on that end at the very least. And, he's big enough that he can defend at least at a reasonable level, improved an okay jump shot, and is going to rebound. He's a very efficient rebounder. Brooklyn made the playoffs this year, but they made the playoffs because of what they were when they had Kyrie and KD.
Right. They banked those wins.
When they left, when those two players left in the trade market middle of the season, they sucked because there's no one left. I mean, they just didn't have any players. That's not head coach and former Kansas Jayhawk Jacques Vaughn's fault. It's not any individual player's fault. I mean, they just didn't have talent. You go from having, he's a nut job, but one of the most talented point guards in the NBA and one of the best pure scorers of all time, both leave at the same time mid-season. Well, yeah, you're obviously going to fall off a cliff. No duh. So there should be some opportunities to actually play for this team. You get the fun KU connection with, again, Jacques Vaughn, and now a KU draft pick. And look, Brooklyn's going to try some things. They're going to try to mix things up and figure out some lineups that are going to work. I assume they'll probably be fairly active in free agency to try to add some veteran talent. I think this is a good spot for Jalen. I think he's going to make that roster because I don't think it's a very good roster.
So Jalen's 6'8" with shoes on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's his basketball measurement. Here's a collection of wing players not guards. Let's call these wings, 3s and 4s.
Okay.
Here's the collection of 3s and 4s that the Nets had last year and their respective heights. Like Royce O'Neal is technically a small forward. He's listed as a small forward. He's 6'4". Dorian Finney-Smith, 6'7". Somebody named Raekwon Gray was on a 2-way. He's 6'8". Cameron Johnson is 6'8". Yuta Watanabe is 6'9". Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Not a lot of height.
Like, not a lot of size on this team, not a lot of depth at the spot where Jalen Wilson plays. So he is definitely going to have an opportunity. I think if he can be a reliable catch and shoot 3-point guy, that's going to be the separator, I think, for him being maybe a bit of a journeyman, but somebody who can stick in the league because he competes and he rebounds and works hard, has the size. The difference for him between being that in the league and being somebody who sticks around and contributes and contributes to a winning team is going to be that shooting. Like, if he can be reliable, like catch, get the shot off and knock it down from the corner or from wherever, that's going to be, I think, the separating skill for him. And I think he can get there. I do. I don't think some guys just they got bad form. They got broken jumpers, whatever you want to call it. I don't think Jalen Wilson's jumper is broken. I just think, I think there's another level you can get to as a shooter.
I think something that Jalen could use to continue to improve that jumper is simply just mechanics. Not like there's a weird hitch in it and a super low release point. Like, I think when it actually comes out, it looks fine, but he kind of leans away from shots sometimes. A little too much reliance earlier in his college career on fading away on shots. Consistency, I think, will be important. And spacing in the NBA is different than in college, too. And I think that probably will help him in that regard. Not that KU was a complete pack the paint team, but there were some times this year when Jalen was the best player, one of the best players in America, where they did pack the paint because they couldn't shoot. If Gradey was getting shut down, there was really only a 3-point option, and it was Jalen Wilson. So I do think there's going to be a role for him long-term in the NBA. It might be as a journeyman. And hey, you play 9-10 years in the league and you play for 7 different teams, but you're on the roster every year. You're playing every year. Hey, that's a pretty good career. That's a really nice career. In fact, we just talked about that with Svi yesterday. He's been on every team in the league almost at this point, and he's still around. Teams keep trading for him. Teams keep signing him. There's obviously a spot for that guy. And Jalen and Svi, not the same kind of player, but happy for him. And I think Brooklyn's a good fit. I do think he's going to get rostered. I don't think he'll just end up jumping between the G League and the big club all year long. I think he's going to be a full-time roster guy because they don't have a ton of free agents, but there's also just not a ton of like good players on that team. Like, there's Spencer Dinwiddie. There's, like, if you're still completely naive and you think Ben Simmons cares about playing in the NBA, like, maybe you think there's still talent there. But other than that, I mean, there's just not really a whole lot on that team. So I hope it works out. They had a pretty good draft, I thought. They took Noah Clowney. Who was the other draft pick they took? Derrick Whitehead from Duke. So I think they actually ended up with a pretty good draft. Any other things about the NBA draft last night that really stood out to you?
It took 5 hours.
Yeah, it took way too long.
What the hell?
They have a 5-minute clock. You know, in the NFL draft, it's 10 minutes in round 1, 7.5 on day 2, and it's 5 minutes on day 3. And day 3, they get through the picks fairly quickly. And round 1 usually takes 4 hours, but again, it's a 10-minute clock. The NBA is a 5-minute clock, and it took 3 hours to do 30 picks. That is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, because the clock is just a suggestion. Basically, they're announcing the picks as soon as ESPN is done with whatever thought it is that they've got going. And like, ESPN interviewed every pick who was there in the first round, and this is not a knock on those interviews. I actually think Monica McNutt did a really good job. Do we need to hear from everybody's parents? No, I don't think we did.
Yeah, just the whole broadcast sucked.
Yeah, it's not a good television product.
Not to get too sports media nerd here, but I just wish anyone else had the rights on regular cable or regular TV to broadcast it, because it was terrible.
Well, you don't broadcast and just plow through the clock. The NBA just used to say, hey, we're announcing the picks when they're in. Like, we're going to the podium. Like, sorry if JJ Redick is not done with his thought. Adam Silver's going to the podium. We got places to be. We got picks to announce.
Can I share one quick thought about the crew that was breaking things down? Because I don't think any of them, like, I'm not a huge Jay Billis guy. I thought Malika Andrews was okay, but not, I mean, she's not like Ernie Johnson up there. I mean, the whole crew wasn't very good. If I never heard JJ Redick speak again the rest of my life, I would be a happier person.
You're down on JJ Redick, huh?
JJ Redick isn't bad. JJ Redick sucks. He's a Twitter user with a face. Like he's like NBA Twitter 14-year-old. Because he has gone on TV and argued with Screamin' A. Smith about, like, oh, well, today's players actually play real talent. They don't play plumbers like in the old days. Dude, give me a break. Like, you, compared to today, you came out in 2006, dude. Like, it's different eras then to now to 20 years before you. So that take sucks and is shared by 13-year-olds on the internet all the time. His humor is terrible. He was not funny at all. And he straight up admits going into the draft, he doesn't even watch college basketball. And last night at one point, he admitted he wasn't even paying attention. He got asked a question and he's like, oh, what? Sorry, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. You have to be on TV for 5 hours, dude. You're not going to be on TV again until October for preseason games. You can pay attention for 20 minutes between commercials.
Yeah, I want to hear from college basketball guys. And if I'm not going to hear from college basketball guys, I want to hear from guys who are going to entertain me. And JJ Redick, I think he's a pretty sharp guy generally, but maybe the draft televised coverage, not maybe his lane. Like, I'd rather hear more from Jay Billis, who knows, like, the college guys, especially, who can tell me something about them because he probably did watch them, or at least, you know, is familiar enough with their work. Or B. Barkley on TNT, because I know he didn't watch any college basketball until the NCAA tournament. But like,
and then he only watches the Auburn games.
Yes, but then he'll entertain me.
Yeah.
So yeah, give me one or the other. Give me the analysis or entertain me. And if you're just in the middle on both of those things, it's not going to be.
No.
It's just It was a very bad TV show. The NBA draft. They
miss having a guy whose entire job is doing the draft. Like JJ Redick is an NBA commentator. Jay Billis is a college basketball commentator. They need like basketball Mel Kiper, whose whole life is just the NBA draft. I think that would have made it better. Which is weird, but I really mean it.
Text from the 785 said, anyone like JJ Redick that says Larry Bird couldn't compete in today's game is disqualified from being an expert.
No, I agree. I agree with that take. I don't care if it makes me sound old. I agree with that take. Like, I just hate today's athletes are better, which means the previous era shouldn't count. Like, but that they were playing the best that they had. Like, that was the best of the best.
You're the one that said Babe Ruth would faint if he ever saw a slider from a modern major league pitcher.
And I still stand by that take. But he was still great for his time. But yes, I would faint if I was standing in the box and saw a slider today. And I've grown up with this.
No, yeah, I guess, I can take or leave JJ Redick. He wasn't very good on the draft last night. Yeah, it was a bad TV product. Gradey Dick's suit is one thing, but somebody needs to tell him he can't wear that chain to every NBA city.
Someone's gonna snatch it.
No, he can't wear a chain that says GD on it to every NBA city. He's gonna have to learn which ones. He's gonna have to listen to some music. He's gonna have to go through some musical catalogs, and he has to figure out what that means, first of all, what the alternate GD is, and where he can and can't wear that chain.
Mark on YouTube says TNT needs the draft. Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They had it way back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. The TNT guys on the draft would definitely entertain you.
Yeah. They'd hold it down. Oh, well, I guess we're stuck.
Also, you could tell, too, that ESPN was very sensitive to the idea of, we want to make sure that we explain who all of these guys are. We're not just going to run a pick underneath a Taco Bell commercial and then not talk about them, because they get fried for doing that for the Nikola Jokic pick now, going on like 3 years. Everybody brings it up. Hey, remember the time Nikola Jokic got picked and it was during a Taco Bell commercial and the NBA draft broadcast didn't even mention him? Like, they're never going to get caught red-handed like that again.
By the way, while I'm just ranting and raving about this, all the complaints about the people on the main desk, I think, are fair. You know who the worst person on TV was last night? Like, the least watchable member of the broadcast crew? Woj. Do not ever put him on television.
He's not a TV guy.
Just show his tweets. Take a screenshot of his tweet and put it up in a graphic on TV. He stares into the camera with these dead, soulless eyes and just stammers the whole way. Which, like, look,
they just could have put his tweets up because they were all the same.
Like, if you have a stammer or sputter when you talk, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But maybe talking in front of millions of people watching on TV is not what you should be doing during one of the biggest nights of the calendar in your sport. Just a thought. That was bad. That was my takeaway is, damn, why am I watching this? This is not well put together. Let's get to a quick break. We're going to find our weekly champion and what is wrong with you after this here on 580 Sports Talk.
hell? What the hell?
This week of What Is Wrong With You culminates right now here on 580 Sports Talk as we find our weekly champion. As always, though, What Is Wrong With You, we need to tell you, is brought to you by Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, which saves time, money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal at Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Our current weekly winner, it is the Petty Pennies, trying to go wire to wire, a short wire to wire because we started the week on Tuesday. Anyway, the gentleman who owed $915 in unpaid overtime to an employee at his auto shop and paid it out with 91,500 pennies dumped in the guy's driveway, covered in some sort of oil, with a pay stub that had an expletive written on the note at the guy. What a jerk. Oh, by the way, he also owes $40,000 in other unpaid overtime. Again, what a jerk. My story today is going to take us to St. Louis, Missouri, where a daycare facility worker has been charged with possession of a controlled substance and 8 counts of endangering the welfare of a child, creating substantial risk. That's very detailed. After a baggie of methamphetamine was found in the infant and toddler room of their daycare. 36-year-old Nicole Doster, a manager at Kids Play Childcare and Preschool, was charged after investigators say she left a bag of meth on the floor of the facility's infant room on June 16th. Just casually leaving her meth all over her place of business. According to a statement, law enforcement officials were contacted by the Manchester Child Care Facility for a report of a possible controlled substance found in the room. When officers arrived, they said they found a small plastic baggie that contained a large crystalline structure and crystalline dust. The officer was told the bag was found in that room, which had 8 children in it at the time. Officers then said an investigation indicated the baggie belonged to Doster, and when police searched her purse, they found another baggie with more crystal meth. The statement said that a lab analysis confirmed it was methamphetamine in both baggies. Thankfully, no children were harmed, and Doster was fired immediately.
I bet.
Yeah, I'd hope. The room, by the way, has been cleaned and sanitized.
Yeah, maybe, don't bring your drugs to work.
According to the administrator of the daycare, they said Doster was a manager and had been there for 2 years and had passed a background check with no other issues. Quote, "We're shocked by this." I'm sure you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't bring your meth to work. Don't do meth, but also don't bring it to work if you have it.
Two good rules to live by. For my story, we're going north of the border. We're going to Toronto, where 2 Toronto police officers accused of stealing whiskey that they had recovered during arrest were both charged after a tracking device led investigators to one of their homes.
Uh-oh.
The officers were charged criminally after they allegedly stole 2 bottles of alcohol that were seized following the arrest of a suspect on April 12th. At the time, police said that the stolen items were recovered from one of the officers' homes and a vehicle belonging to the other officer, but few other details were provided until police tribunal documents released earlier this week shed more light on the case. The documents state that both officers had responded to a reported theft from an LCBO. That is a liquor store. LCBO stands for Liquor Control Board of Ontario, and that is apparently where you buy liquor in the province of Ontario in Canada. You go to the LCBO and you buy your booze. Both officers had responded to a reported theft from an LCBO when they took a male suspect who was wanted on several outstanding warrants into custody. At the time of the arrest, the suspect was allegedly in possession of 2 stolen bottles of Johnny Walker Black Label whiskey. For the uninitiated, Johnny Walker Red is the cheap stuff. Johnny Walker Black is the second cheapest stuff. Johnny Walker Blue is the good stuff.
Okay.
But Johnny Walker Black, so we're not talking about like the top of the top shelf here.
Okay.
But a guy stole 2 bottles of whiskey. Those bottles were never submitted to the 51 Division property locker system, according to the documents. The reason that they ended up being found out was laid out in the allegations contained in the notice of hearing for Constable Brian James. You paraded the arrested male in relation to the holdup squad case and never disclosed that there was a seizure of alcohol during the arrest of the male. You and Thomas Victor were later observed on CCTV leaving the station in uniform, each carrying a box of the Johnny Walker liquor. You walked through the station parking lot to the area of your personal cars. Unbeknownst to you, the box in your possession contained a LCBO tracking device.
Uh-oh.
The documents say that Ontario Provincial Police in Bracebridge were contacted by LCBO investigators on April 23rd, who advised them they had located the tracking device.
Imagine having a liquor store investigator.
Yeah, they take their liquor sales extremely seriously in Ontario. James and Victor were previously charged with theft under $5,000, possession of property obtained by crime under $5,000, and breach of trust. They have not yet gone to court.
They bleeped around and they found out.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, a tale as old as time.
Yes. Police officer thinking, you know what, we can take some of this for ourselves. It's like all those hot pants that wash up on the beach at the end of that one Simpsons episode. The police officers just take the hot pants. Yes, we've seen it on a cartoon that is meant to be funny, and this is real life. These officers thinking, hey man, they'll never notice this gone. They got a tracking device on it.
That's pretty hardcore. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I'm definitely not stealing any alcohol the next time I make it up to an LCBO in Ontario.
Now, what would have made this even more Canadian is if instead of on CCTV, they saw them on SCTV doing this. That would also be even funnier, however, because it probably would have included some of Canada's finest comedians. Who you got today?
2 good stories. I like the police officer ineptitude. The idea that they could just steal. Man, it wasn't even like the top shelf liquor. Man.
Yeah. I just wanted to get drunk.
Like, I would get it if it was the Johnny Walker Blue.
Yeah.
The black label?
Well, maybe they figured they were in the clear since it was only the black label.
Yeah, maybe they figured and never noticed it gone.
That might have been the case. I don't think that takes down the petty pennies.
No, that's going to be a tough one when we crown a monthly champion, I think.
91,500 pennies. What a tool. That is our winner in What Is Wrong With You, which, as always, is sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. By the way, next week, Thursday, Friday, we will find our monthly champion in What Is Wrong With You. Semifinals next Thursday and the finals for the month of June coming up next Friday. Just one more week left in the month of June. How about that? Let's take a timeout since we are done early today, off at 5 due to Royals baseball. We'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines next. A crazy game last night at the College World Series, some all-star voting updates, and more KU Stadium news to get to. That's all coming up next on 580 Sports Talk.
You can help make it.
Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk for another 15 minutes before we send you to the Royals Radio Network for Royals and Rays tonight. Some 580 Sports Talk headlines to get to as we take you into the weekend. We've got the latest update on the All-Star balloting for the 2023 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. So we are now down to the finalists for before we get to phase 2 of Major League All-Star voting. That begins Monday at 11 o'clock, by the way. So the way this works, I don't know, maybe you feel differently about this, Dan. I feel like this is a little more complex than it needs to be. Like, I feel like you could just put it all together and say, let's all vote for a larger period of time and just pick the top vote getters at each position, but that's not really how it works. So the top vote getters in each league end up getting pushed all the way through. They're in. They don't have to get voted on anymore. So Shohei Ohtani was the most voted on player in the American League. Ronald Acuna Jr. of the Braves, most voted on player in the National League. They are clear on through to the All-Star game. So those are your first two guaranteed, locked on, all-star starters. Not a surprise for either one. If Luis Arise doesn't hit 400, I think Acuna is going to win MVP in the National League.
I think Acuna is going to win MVP regardless.
If Arise hits 400, do you think it would still go to Acuna?
Yes.
I do not. I think
because it'll be an empty 400 with no power for a team that's not going to make the playoffs.
I agree, but I think the voters have proven that they will give a vote to history over the actual best player. And I think the Trout-Cabrera debate summed that up.
But Cabrera won the Triple Crown for a team that went to the playoffs.
Yeah. No one's hit 400 in the National League since 1930, though.
Did that guy win the MVP?
You know, I could not tell you. Let's go find out. In 1930, it was Hack Wilson who won MVP.
Yeah, because he drove in, I think that might have been the year he drove in 190 some runs. He did not hit 400. I know that.
Yeah, let's see. I don't know.
That was the year he hit 56 dingers and drove in 191 runs, but he hit 356.
All right, so let's see.
Actually, you know what? No, it says he didn't win the MVP that year.
He did win it?
No, he didn't.
Oh.
They might not have your 1930 MVP. Why can't I get to 1930 awards? Did they not vote for an MVP?
I don't know that they did because Baseball Reference doesn't seem to have anything.
Yeah, they didn't give an award in 1930. All right, shame on me.
Well, I can tell you that it was Bill Terry of the New York Giants.
Who hit 400?
He hit 401. That's the last National League player to hit 400.
I'm trying to find the time before that, if there was a time before that and they award an MVP. Either way, no, I don't think Luis Arise, if he hits 400, it is an amazing feat, and they do have an award for that. They'll give him a silver bat, and he'll probably win Silver Slugger too. But Ronald Acuna Jr. right now is running away with the MVP award, and Corbin Carroll will be second and win Rookie of the Year.
I don't necessarily disagree that that's how it should go. I just think if you that number has been so mythical for so long, I think the voters would give it to that over the actual best player. Right or wrong, I'm just saying that's how I think they would end up voting. But regardless, he's been awesome. Top vote getter in the National League. Top vote getter among all players, in fact. Acuna is on. So here's your finalists at every position. In the American League, at catcher, Adley Rutschman, Jonah Heim. Not a surprise there.
No.
It should be Rutschman, by the way. First base, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Yandy Diaz of the Blue Jays and Rays, respectively. I did not know this until today. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does not have a home run at home this season.
They even moved in the fences this year. There have been a lot of home runs in Toronto. He doesn't have one yet. It's weird. He has 9 home runs.
Yeah.
He hit 48 a couple of years ago.
Yeah, weird. Second baseman, Marcus Semien of the Rangers, Whit Merrifield of the Blue Jays. All of Canada is voting for the All-Star game.
Apparently.
Every single person in Canada.
All it takes for the Blue Jays to be sort of good, and their players get crazy totals.
Third base, another example, Josh Young of the Rangers, Matt Chapman of the Blue Jays. Matt Chapman is a really good player.
Yes.
Shortstop, Bo Bichette of the Blue Jays, Corey Seager of the Rangers. Are you noticing a pattern at this point? And your top 5 outfielders, I believe, top 5 outfielders, Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Randy Arozarena, Yordan Alvarez, Kevin Kiermaier, and Adolis Garcia. 6, not 5. This is the worst season of Trout's career by a lot, and he's still well above average and everything.
Yeah.
But except even batting average is above league average. But yeah, definitely a down year for him overall. I hope Arozarena gets in because I love Randy Arozarena.
Yeah, Randy rules.
He's awesome. I assume it'll be Arozarena, Trout, Judge. I think those 3 will stay on top of the vote getting.
Feels about right.
In the National League, your catchers, Sean Murphy and Will Smith. First base, Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson, the guy I always confused with Matt Chapman. Second base, Luis Arise, Ozzie Albies. Not a surprise for either of them. Nolan Arenado at third base, along with Austin Riley, another Brave. Shortstop, Orlando Arcia, Braves. It's going to be Braves versus Blue Jays. That's just what the All-Star game is going to be, at least in the first inning. Francisco Lindor also tops among shortstops in the NL. Your NLDH, JD Martinez and Bryce Harper are the final 2 in starter voting. And among outfielders, Mookie Betts of the Dodgers, Corbin Carroll of the Diamondbacks, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. of the Diamondbacks, and Michael Harris, the second of the Braves. Harris has been red hot recently.
Yeah, he started rough, but he has certainly caught fire.
So the way this is going to work, you will vote on if you are an all-star, a fan of all-star voting. Starting on Monday, you'll be able to vote for among the finalists at all of these positions. And that lasts for what, 2 weeks? I think no, not even a full week. It just goes Monday through Thursday. So in relatively short order, we will know who the starters are across the board for the AL and NL in the All-Star game.
Banger of a College World Series game last night, an 11-inning classic one on a 2-run home run by LSU's Tommy White. In the bottom of the 11th, LSU walks off Wake Forest 2-0 to clinch a spot in the Men's College World Series final. They will take on Florida starting Saturday night in the best of 3 College World Series Championship Series.
That was a great game, ending in
two best college pitchers in the country.
Yeah.
Brett Lauder for Wake, Paul Skeens for LSU. Awesome game, delivered on the hype.
Yeah, no, nothing more to say really than that. Great game. Last thing I've got for you on this brief edition of 580 Sports Talk headlines. Yesterday, there was some reporting, some leaking of initial renderings of what the new version of David Booth Kansas Memorial Stadium could look like. And it was reported that some of the consultants hired by KU recommended a new seating capacity at the booth of 39,839 seats. That would make it the smallest in the Big 12 and one of the smallest in all of the Power 5, only bigger than I think 3 other schools. Duke, I remember, is smaller. I do not remember the other ones that are even smaller than that. The new Northwestern Stadium in Oregon State. I believe those are the other 2. Travis Goff, the director of athletics at KU, has come out and said, we love our consultants, but we are going to have between 40 and 45,000 seats. So it's not going to be that low. Do not fret. I know what fans want because I am a fan because I went to the school. I'm from Kansas. Oh, trust us. Please contribute to our NIL fund. That was essentially the gist of his tweets.
At 4 a.m.
Yeah, Travis Goff, a huge fan of what he has done on the job. Why are you up at 4 a.m. tweeting about your stadium? This can wait till 8 a.m. I promise you, it can wait. Schedule the tweets if you need to. But that's your update on the KU Stadium. They say they're going to find spots for parking and tailgating. I will believe it when I see it because these renderings essentially take out all of the parking lot space. So,
right.
Yeah, we'll see. That does it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll finish up the week with the final word after this on 580 Sports Talk.
Is your
Time to wrap things up. 580 Sports Talk. We're done early for Royals baseball, so let's get to a final word.
My favorite story of the day in sports comes from amateur golf, where Ball State University has received a commitment from a young man from Bloomington, Indiana, by the name of Landon Happy Gilmore. That's right. Goes by Happy these days. He won a long drive contest when he was 6 years old. So young Landon's nickname, of course, instantly became Happy. It has naturally stuck as he has progressed through a quite successful junior golf career at Bloomington South High School. Today announced his commitment to Ball State and proceeded to break the internet. Heard from Adam Sandler himself, who tweeted at him, "Go get him, Happy, pulling for you." Happy Gilmore's response: "My life is complete." I've been scrolling through his Twitter account. Seems like a pretty nice kid with a great sense of humor about his famous name. All that's missing is Vern Lundquist weighing in with a, "Who the hell is Happy Gilmore?" Good luck, kid.
This might be the end for Happy Gilmore.
Maybe this is a new Happy Gilmore.
I love Vern so much.
Do you think he ever walks off the green and says, "Uh-oh, Happy learned how to putt"?
I would think so. You know, it's not like the guys who did like basketball or like horrible movies that just dread it. Like, who was Al Michaels was in basketball and made fun of it one time.
Imagine you're playing with that kid and he stiffs one on a par 3 and turns to you and goes, "Somebody's closer."
Punch him in the face.
I'd go full Bob Barker on him. I would.
Swing the club at him. Final word for me. Very happy for Keyontae Johnson, Jalen Wilson, Gradey Dick, and Marquise Noel, too, for their draft nights. No, Marquise didn't get picked, but I think it's a good situation in Toronto. Definitely a good fit for Gradey Dick there. And I'm glad Keyontae and Jalen Wilson are going to get chances to show their stuff too, get a chance to make a couple rosters. And I think they will. I think both guys, both Keyontae Johnson and Jalen Wilson, will make the Thunder and the Nets respectively. That does it for this week on 580 Sports Talk. We've got Royals baseball coming up next and throughout the weekend. For Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Brzezinski. We'll talk to you Monday on 580 Sports Talk.